This is a short story, and while it may not seem too creepy now, it was absolutely terrifying to my 8-year-old self. The home I grew up in was in Long Island, New York, and the basement is lined on one side with small windows, probably about 3 feet by 1 foot rectangular, with sliding glass panes on them. The house was built during World War II, so it is made of what they had at the time. Normally, we would have curtains on the inside of those windows, so nothing could see in or come in. This particular day, my mother had been washing them and hadn't put them back yet. Anyways, I was around 8 or 9 years old, sitting there playing Mario 3 on my NES, when I got the distinct feeling like I was being watched or someone was there. I looked over my shoulder to the windows, and I see the outline of someone's face there. Once they notice me looking at them, they knock on the window really loud, vigorously waving at me, and then bolted off, hopping over the neighbor's fence into the adjacent yard. Needless to say, I left the NES on and noped the way out of there as fast as possible. The next day, the NES was moved upstairs to the family room, and I still check to make sure curtains are on if I'm down in that basement. He was living in our basement. So, this happened about 7 or so years ago, when I was still living at home with my mother. We lived on the first floor, my aunt on the second, and our neighbor on the third floor, who we were close with, Cindy. We were all friendly in our building, and I never felt unsafe or uneasy at any time. One day my mom was doing laundry in the basement and noticed a couple of her blankets were missing. She thought it was odd, thought maybe my aunt had mistakenly taken them, so she was kinda like whatever about it. A couple of days later, she hears noises in the basement. We lived on the first floor and you can hear everything down there. It was late at night, so she didn't want to go down there and check, but she went outside on the porch to have a cigarette and noticed the cellar door leading outside was open. When she always closed it at night, she closed it and went inside, thinking maybe the wind made it open and a raccoon or something got into the basement. I mean, it's happened a few times before. Nothing weird happens for over a week, till she notices clothes missing. Now she knows something is up, because my dad was the only male in the building, and it was the men's clothing that were missing, and it smelled really bad down there. She brings it up to my aunt, and also asks about the blankets. My aunt says she never touched them. The next day, my mom was doing laundry again, and noticed something in her empty flower pot in the basement. It had human feces in it, quite a lot, like someone was using it for a while. She's disgusted and freaked out. She decides to check the back room of the basement. I've never liked going back there, no matter how much light you bring, and the 2 lights in the ceiling, it's always so dark and creepy. After this, I never go back there alone. She finds back there a bunch of her blankets, a sleeping bag, some clothes, and more shit. Then, she notices something stir under the sleeping bag. It was a man. My mom freaked out and asked who the hell he was, and that she would call the cops right away. My aunt heard the ratchet and came down to the basement and actually recognized him. Turns out, he was Cindy's brother, who recently had nowhere to live because he was a drug addict, and generally not a very good person. My mom told Cindy, and she talked to her brother and told him he had to leave. I guess he didn't bother asking Cindy if he could stay with her, knowing that she'd probably just say no. So he decided to squat in our basement for weeks. It scared me quite a lot, and ever since, I always hate going down there alone. And I can't help but draw my eyes to the back room entryway, my heart pounding, waiting for a person to appear. My mom said she didn't call the cops because she didn't want to upset Cindy, which is nice, I suppose. And nice that Cindy was able to make him leave without any trouble. I felt kinda bad and sad for him, but really still, my neighbor's troubled brother, let's not meet. Who knows what you were capable of? Chased in my own basement. First, I would like to apologize for any inconsistencies or mistypes you may find in my post, as English is not my first language, nor my second. Background information: I live in an apartment complex having 4 separate doors with a badge access, but sharing the same basement, which is also shared with the market so that their customers have a place to park their cars. To go down to the basement, you can take one of the 4 elevators of each of the buildings by passing your badge, which you cannot use to go to the back as the door only open from the inside, through the car entrance by passing your bank card or using the elevator that leads to the market. To go back to your apartment without passing by the market, there are only 4 doors, one for each building, that opens with a code and not the badge. Now, for the actual encounter, it was around 1 a.m. in the morning that I realized that I forgot to take out the trash, and since I ate mussels that night, I couldn't wait for tomorrow. First odd thing I noticed was that all the lights in the hallway didn't work, which made me uncomfortable, but not worried since it was summer, the perfect time for the maintenance and also the time when most people are not at home. Second odd thing was, in the basement, just when I started pushing the door, the lights that should normally be off this time were on. There are sensors in the basement that turn on the lights when someone enters. Relating it to the electricity issue of the hallway, I continued my way to the bin room. Being a lazy person, I kept a hand on the door while throwing the bag with the other. Just when I left the room, I heard a sound. I can't say exactly what it was even now. All I can give you is a description from my memory, using my poor vocabulary, hoping that you will put together what I'm trying to say. You know the sound that a person makes when they are in extreme pain trying to scream, but the pain just won't let their voice out, which leads to a continuous sound? The last cry of a moose trying to call his comrades for help while being eaten by a lion. It was that kind of sound, whether it came from an animal nor a human. Now that I think about it, the voice was omnipresent from the second I put my feet in the basement, but it didn't get my attention, since they put all the machinery related to the water heating, central heating, and God knows what other machines they keep inside the closed doors, and they sometimes do abnormal sounds. But that sound was clearly from something alive. I could also discern a human voice mixed with a scream of despair. Clack. The bin room door slowly closed loudly behind me, and with it the mouth of whoever was talking somewhere in the basement, as I can't tell exactly where it came from with the echo. At that time, my heart was beating twice as fast as an average person, but also trying to reassure myself, I told myself that it may be someone coming home after getting drunk, or someone or something who hurt him, or himself getting transplanted to the hospital. In both cases, I need to offer my help, and that's what I told myself, and my brain functions clearly wasn't working properly at that point, or maybe it was just my curiosity. "Is anyone here?" I shouted. Pointless to say that it was the worst decision I made. I heard a sound of what I assumed to be a door or a trunk, which made the scream stop, followed by footsteps. Whoever did that to a living being was running towards me. At that point, I couldn't think of anything else but surviving. I ran towards my only exit, which was the door, typed the code with my shaking fingers, red light, typed it again with my hands shaking even more, and the footsteps closer than ever. It was green. I pushed the door open with all of my strength and then closed it with my whole body, but something was keeping it from closing. It was the person chasing me. Thus, I put both my legs on the stairs. To go down, you use the elevator and a door, and you can only be open from the inside. To go up, you use a door with a code and stairs, and use them to put even more power into closing the goddamn door. After a few more seconds that seemed like it lasted for an eternity, the door finally closed. I stood up again, and started climbing the stairs as fast as I could. I live in the 6th floor, but I'm used to climbing them daily since I don't have time to play sports, and I found them useful to reduce the negative impact on the lack of sports or other activities. The only difference is that it was without lights this time, and with a lot more adrenaline inside my blood and inside my body. When I was about at the 3rd or 4th floor, a door opened, and a few seconds later I could hear someone climbing the same stairs I was climbing. We both couldn't see in the dark, so the last remaining floors left seemed even farther than they are, but I eventually made it to my door. It took me a long time to find the lock, especially when all my body was shaking from head to toe, but the person chasing me seemed to have more troubles with the stairs than I did, so by the time I opened the door, he was still very far away from me, judging from the sound of it all. The moment I locked the door, I couldn't control any of my muscles, and I fell down on my knees. It took me around a full 15 minutes to regain control of my body, and for my brain to become operational again. I didn't tell this to anyone, as I don't even know what that sound came from, or what it was, or who the person chasing me was, and not even why he was behind me, but judging from what happened, he didn't really have good intentions at all. And of course, I honestly hope we never meet again. We shouldn't be in the basement. I'm attending a small private college in the Midwestern United States. As a fine arts major, I spend many late nights in the art building. This particular evening, several students were there along with one of my professors. I was gonna take some creepy photographs for an assignment in the building's basement. I'd been there before, and it was basically a long concrete coffin for storage. I mean, personally, I wasn't scared, but I did persuade my friend Beth to join me. The staircase came out in the middle of a slim rectangular structure, divided into several rooms. We turned on all the lights to see stacks of artwork, and old documents were piled in every corner and crevice, and someone had sneezed cobwebs over everything. We had to leave at one point to help another student moving pottery, and upon our return the stairwell light was on, but the entire basement was pitch black. I was certain we'd left all the lights on. I asked Beth, but she just mumbled a quiet, "I don't know." I figured I'd just forgotten. We were in a room about 40 feet long, and were positioned on the side furthest from the stairwell. Our only light source was coming from the far right room. The white light spilled across the graffitied wall I'd be photographing. The back of the room was occupied with a huge heating and cooling duct system. It took up almost the entire back wall and pushed into the room about 5 feet. Stacks and stacks of cardboard boxes and tools cluttered the area around it. I tried to pass the time with chatter. I almost thought some horribly grotesque art project gone wrong would jump out of the shadows. About 20 minutes had passed when we heard a faint sound coming from the stairwell. It sounded distant. I asked Beth if she'd heard it, and received a nod. It sounded kind of like someone clapping their hands together, but we were definitely the only two down there. I shivered internally and continued talking again, trying to distract myself, trying to make myself believe that I wasn't actually down there. "Scrip." All talking stopped. It sounded like someone dragging an object across the hard floor, like cardboard across concrete. I stood up. That sound came from inside this room, near the stairs area. I thought it was an animal, but how in the world would it get down there? There was only one entrance and one exit. It was the same place. My eyes darted from side to side, searching the darkness. Then, without warning, A small cardboard box shot out from behind the far end of the duct machine. It slid across the floor, and my stomach dropped like a weight. It wasn't like that box fell and rolled across the ground. Something or someone threw, pushed, or kicked the damn thing. It came out like a fucking rocket. I mean, something was in here with us. I grabbed Beth's arm. Her eyes were glued to the box. She was terrified. There was no way anyone else had gone in here with us without us hearing or seeing them. My logical brain was screaming that fact, but what on earth moved that goddamn box? My brain was reeling as I shifted my back to the only lit room. The light felt safe somehow. Do you want to go? I heard Beth whisper. Was she crazy? If you want to go, I'll go too. When I gave her props for her manners, we couldn't just go. I mean, the box was sitting right in front of the opposite door, our only escape to the safety of the staircase and a light switch. There was no way I was gonna just waltz by whatever kicked it out there. I stayed silent though. I wasn't sure I could talk. During that time, we heard small sounds from behind the big machine. Tap, 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 like an impatient hand drumming a metal desk. But it soon escalated to bang, bang, bang. It was so loud, and the tight space made it echo and intensify. We didn't know what the fuck was going on, and we had no idea what to do or where to even go. All we could hear was the constant noise, but we couldn't see anything in the darkness, in the pitch darkness. It was so frustrating that I somehow found my voice. Who the hell are you? I managed to choke out. It sounded much less intimidating than intended. You better knock the fuck off. My hands were shaking. And it was then that all that noise changed, and we heard one of the most disturbing sounds I've ever witnessed. But it wasn't because of the sound itself. This awful screeching and scratching reverberated across the room. It literally sounded like nails on a chalkboard, but I knew what it was, and it scared the absolute shit out of me. Something big was crawling behind that damn machine, and we could tell it was coming towards us. And it was coming fast, really fucking fast. That was the most disturbing part. It moved so desperately towards us, straining against the machine and scraping the whole goddamn wall. It was running a concrete block against the cheese grater and amplified 1,000 times. It must have gone a tight fit for whatever it was, and we couldn't see a goddamn thing. In my head, all I could imagine was some sort of disgusting and disfigured person scrambling towards us. Probably had gross teeth and 5 legs and a knife. Maybe they had been down here for a while, and we disturbed them in their hidey hole. People didn't venture to the basement often, and there certainly weren't routine checks. Someone could, in theory, hide out down there. Either way, I knew they were trying to attack. Nothing moves that fast to say hello. My adrenaline was pumping, and Beth looked about ready to keel over in fear. I scanned the room for some sort of a weapon, and the closest object was a nasty-looking plunger. It may not have been the most graceful choice, but it was better than nothing. Another noise echoed from the other end of the room. It was definitely a cell phone hitting the concrete on the far end, but it wasn't either of ours. Instantly, all my fear turned to anger, like a switch flipped. I knew who it was, my best friend. Carrie, you bitch! You dropped your fucking phone, get out here so I can kick your ass! I was seething. Adrenaline doesn't mix well with anger, at least not in this situation. I started moving, when whoever had been moving towards us behind the machine jumped out right behind Beth and I. It was a short, hefty person, but their face looked remarkably like a bleached pig, complete with beady red eyes. I quickly realized it was a disturbing mask. The person instantly sprinted towards us, and I stumbled back with a gasp. My hand was in a fist, and I swore I was gonna punch someone out when I heard stifled laughter. Of all people, my fucking professor comes crawling out from the boxes. I can remember going, "What the fuck?" I was dumbfounded. Carrie came out from behind the machine sheepishly, clutching her shitty phone, and the mass sprinter was revealed to be another student. These idiots had decided, on a whim, to prank us. They were successful. The pottery student and even the janitor were in on it, tasked with distracting us so the others could sneak downstairs. They turned the lights off, and I had walked by their hiding spot several times. We were in there with them for almost 10 minutes, thinking that we were alone. Naturally, I ordered them to get the fuck out so I could finish my goddamn assignment. Though I wasn't happy to see my friends, I'm glad I met them instead of my imaginary alternatives.